What's up, everybody? Welcome to part two of the Spurs NBA Draft Report. I'm your host, Shivam Patel, and we're coming to you the day after the first round of the 2026 NBA Draft, which took place at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York. The Spurs had two picks in this draft. The 20th pick was definitely for certain, but then this ended up coming back and trading with the Denver Nuggets to move up to the 26th pick from 35th pick and ended up trading two future second round picks. And they drafted Taurus Reed from the University of UConn. And then with the 20th pick, they drafted Jaden Quaintance from the University of Kentucky, both big guys. In this episode, I'm going to be breaking down both draft picks, their strengths, their weaknesses, and the overall letter grade that I'm going to give for the Spurs NBA draft at both picks. So let's get started. So with the 20th pick, like I said, the Spurs drafted the center from Kentucky, Jaden Quaintance, who was coming off a major knee injury. He missed pretty much the entirety of his sophomore year. He only played 4 games. He reclassified and started college at 17 years old at Arizona State and then transferred to the University of Kentucky, where he was going to be a major piece for the Wildcats team. And if he was healthy, he would have most likely been a top 10 to 15 pick in the draft, but he ended up falling to number 20th to the San Antonio Spurs. And let's talk about, first of all, strengths. He's a really big player, 6'10", 255 pounds. They said he's a power forward center. I think he's more of a 5. He's really young. He's 18 years old. He's going to turn 19 in a couple weeks here as we get into July. But he's a really talented athlete. He has a strong frame, a strong build. He has excellent length. He has, for a big guy, also, he has really good fluid mobility. He moves really well for his size and has really light feet. He's really good in the pick and roll and really getting to the basket and getting to his spots. He can finish around the rim, and with both of his hands, he's really explosive near the basket, which is really important for him. And I just like the way that he can finish off lobs. He has good hands. We can catch, dump off passes for dunks. He has good touch, like I said, around the basket. And overall, he's a really high caliber athlete. On the defensive side of the ball, he can really shot block. He's really good at that, and also not only shot blocking but changing shots around the rim, making the offensive player have to adjust his shot to make it even a tougher shot. And he's good at finishing with rebounding. He can get offensive rebounds. He can get defensive rebounds. And he had a really decorated high school career, and his ceiling is still really, really high, even with the injury. It's just a matter of how he's going to bounce back. Brian Wright said in his post-draft press conference that the Spurs did their homework on him. They have one of the best medical staffs in the entire NBA, and they felt comfortable taking on him and felt like he's at a good process with his recovery, and that he'll eventually be the type of player that he can be. I think the Spurs have an opportunity to really hit high with this pick because, like I said, you're getting a guy that should be a top 10 pick at pick 20. So you're getting really good value for Jaden Quaintance, and you can tell he's a hungry kid that wants to get back to the level that he was at and continue to improve. And what better place to improve your skills is with the San Antonio Spurs. They have the best developmental staff in the entire NBA. They really work with their players. They expand their game. They improve their game. And Jaden Quaintance has really attacked the rehab process really hard, and he wants to be on the floor and make an impact there for his teammates. But going for the concerns, of course, with the knee injury, those things can be major. Those things at times can be career altering. So let's see. You don't want to rush him back because, like I said, he's only 18, but he'll be 19 when the season starts. So you don't know how much he's going to play the first half of the season. Maybe you'll see him the second half of the season towards the playoffs, but also you don't want to put a young guy out there when at a pivotal moment, in the season. But overall, for his weaknesses, he does have limited shooting outside of the paint. Like I said, he has good touch in the paint, but once he gets outside of the paint, he lacks really shooting ranges. And that's a little bit of a concern, even though I need to see whether he has good form with his jump shot, and this is something that he can improve on because he didn't show enough of that sample size for me to get a gauge of whether he can eventually be a really good, good shooter. He does have limited self creation ability. He's not a great playmaker. If he gets doubled, I don't know how great his passing ability is outside of try to get outside of double teams. He's still developing his feel and polish in half court settings. He's a guy that you can throw to him and in the post and he can back down a player, but I don't know if he has the array of post moves to effectively get a shot off. Right now, he's more of a guy that can just finish off lobs, finish off dump offs, and has really good touch in the paint. But let's see if he can work on his back to the basket, ability. And it was concerning, like I said, he only played 4 games of a sophomore year. His durability and long-term health will definitely, be a question, and his unproven offensive ability, but especially outside of the paint. But if there's one team that can really work on him with that and can really get him to improve his skills, it is the San Antonio Spurs team. And it was tough, with this pick because, Jaden Quaidus was one of the players I think the Spurs liked, but with his injury history, I don't know if he would have been their first option that they would have drafted because, of course, we know that at number 9, the Dallas Mavericks drafted Morez Johnson Jr. out of Michigan, which the Mavericks ended up, getting the Michigan head coach. So I knew at number 9, the Mavericks were going to get either one of Michigan players, either Morez Johnson or Adai Mara, who both I really like, by the way. But Adai Mara went to number 12 to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I believe they had that pick because specifically to guard Wemby. They know guarding Wemby with Hardenstein and Chet Holmgren is not sustainable. So I think that they wanted to get another big body to guard Wemby, a 7'3" guy. But the thing with the Demara is he has the length, he has the height, but he lacks the foot quickness. So that's something that, Wemby can definitely take advantage of when they do, match up. I did like the third Michigan player, Yaxel Lindenberg. He can play the 3 or the 4, but he ended up getting drafted by the Golden State Warriors at number 11. Another big from Washington ended up getting drafted by the Charlotte Hornets at 14. And then the player that I thought the Spurs really liked as well. In my episode yesterday, I talked about, is a player that I wouldn't be surprised if the Spurs drafted if he was available at 20. That was Alan Graves from Santa Clara, but he ended up going the pick before the Spurs at number 19 to the Toronto Raptors. So I think this was at 20. This was the best pick for the Spurs because another player that I did think that they had the potential to draft, Chris Knight Jr. from Houston, who ended up going at 27. He was just a little bit too raw and not polished enough for the Spurs team. Jaden Quaidus has a little bit more ability and a little bit more upside, in my opinion, than Chris Knight Jr. So I think that's why the Spurs ended up drafting Quaidus at number 20. And again, this is a player that if he can attack his rehab and get back to the projection that he was on, the track that he was on from high school and even early in his college career, I think this could be a home run hit for the Spurs, but that's still a big question mark. So right now, I'm going to give this pick a B-. But overall, I think that this was the best pick that the Spurs could have done at number 20. Let's move on to the next pick. So at 26, the Denver Nuggets drafted Taurus Reed, and we ended up figuring out that was what the pick that they were drafting for the Spurs because there was a trade. So the Spurs gave the 35th pick in the second round to the Denver Nuggets plus 2 second-round picks, and the Spurs had the draft rights for Taurus Reed. This is the player that I really like because UConn went really far in the tournament. They were the national championship runner-up. He is a really, really solid player. He comes from a great program, a championship pedigree program, and we saw how that's worked so far with Stephon Castle, who also came from UConn. He's a winning player. He's getting coached hard by Dan Hurley. Dan Hurley accepts no nonsense. He expects you to give 100% every single practice, every single game. So he comes from a great coaching background and a great program. He's a really good player. He's a selfless player because under a Dan Hurley team, you have to be selfless. But he is a little bit of an older player. He's going to be 23 by the time the season starts. He's 6'11", 260, so he's built like Jaden Quaidus, but he's had more production so far in his college career. So like I said, he's 6'11", with a 7.5 wing 7.5 inch wingspan, excuse me, and a 2 quarters standing reach, which is really good. He has really good measurables. He has tremendous length. He is another player that is an interior presence. He's a back to the basket player. UConn just threw him the ball in the paint, but he has an array of post moves. He has really good footwork. He's really good at going one direction, showing a ball fake, forcing the defender off balance, and then finishing with both hands. He's like a dancing bear. He has really smooth, agile feet. And he does a really good job of putting his pivot foot down and using an array of post moves to really get off the shot that he wants to get off with the hook shot or just a layup in the paint. So that's what UConn would do. They would throw him the ball and he would get them a bucket down low. But also he was a rebounding machine. He was really good at getting offensive rebounds, defensive rebounds, second chance opportunities. He's a rugged player. He can play through contact. He can play through physicality. He's not afraid to bring the physicality at times, really get in there and attack the glass. That's something that I really like for him. He's a player that can definitely contribute quicker because, of course, he doesn't have an injury like Jaden Quaintance, but also he's been in college for 4 years. He's going to be 23 when the season starts, so he's more of a plug and play player. He's not going to be a 5, but he's going to be a 4. So you could throw him in there with either Wimpy or you could throw Luke Cornett at the 5, and you can play Taurus Reed at the 4. He has championship experience, with something that you really like with him. He's a smart, cerebral player with a really high IQ. His post game is his bread and butter, and he's starting to develop more go-to moves inside. He constantly wins battles on the glass, creating second chance opportunities. High level rebounder. His motor is really, really high. He plays hard on both ends of the floor, which is something that you really like to see. He could score in really tight spaces because in college there's no 3-second count like there is in the NBA. So there would be players in droves on him, and he could be able to really score, especially in the NCAA tournament. He had a high field goal percentage, 63% field goal percentages. He stayed within his role. He didn't really try to do anything outside of his role, like shooting too much, which something that Dan Hurley preaches and something that can really translate to the San Antonio Spurs team. And he has really good impact on both ends of the floor. He had a 31.27 rebound performance in the NCAA tournament in the first round, and he was instrumental in UConn's run, producing in high pressure situations. He showed a lot of composure. He knocked down some clutch free throws late in the tournament, which is something that's important. He has a blue collar mentality, and he brings that physical mindset. Weaknesses for him: he limits the perimeter skill set, similar to Jaden Quaintance. He has no shooting ability outside the paint, which is a little bit concerning. Even though he did hit high pressure free throws, he is a 59% free throw shooter, so that raises concerns a little bit, going into the next level. On defense, he can struggle to defend in space. Teams started putting him a little bit of ball screens, and even though he has good feet, he has trouble staying in front of some guards, especially with switch-heavy teams and systems like the NBA likes to do. So that's something that he needs to work on, and the Spurs staff needs to put him in situations where other teams cannot take advantage of that. But overall, he's a little bit of an older prospect, but that's something I don't really take too much of a concern about because he's a plug and play ready player compared to Jaden Quaintance, who's still coming off an injury. So I would give this pick actually a B plus because I like the player. I like the championship program that he comes from. I like the skill set and the mindset that he's going to bring to the Spurs team. And this overall, I think this front office did a really good job of drafting somebody with high upside, like a Jaden Quaintance that's young, that's going to be 19 when the season starts. And then also a plug and play guy, an older guy like a Taurus Reed. I think that's important to have that balance. And you're looking for one out of those two big guys to hit. And if both of them hit, you are golden. And the Spurs address their needs at power forward center. That's something I like to see. And they drafted the best player available at both positions compared to what they needed for the NBA draft. So I think the Spurs had a good first round. I really like the fact that they traded in with the Denver Nuggets to come back into the first round with the 26th overall pick and get a player like Taurus Reed. And then, of course, the Spurs do not have the 35th pick anymore. The Denver Nuggets do have that pick. They have the 42nd and 44th pick tonight. So let's see what they do with that. And I will be back, talking about the draft overall, how the Spurs did. But overall, I gave the Jaden Quaidens pick a B minus, and then I get at 20th, and then I gave the Taurus Reed pick at 26th a B plus. But again, the Spurs are continuing to build in a variety of ways this team to address their needs through the draft, through free agency. But I think they took a good step and they drafted two high quality players that I really like, that I watched a lot. And I think that can really have high impact on the Spurs. And on Jaden Quaidens' case, if he gets back to healthy, good luck trying to get any offensive rebounds or even defensive rebounds on the Spurs. The Spurs will not get out rebounded against the Knicks like they did if you have a healthy Jaden Quaidens and you have a healthy Wemby, even if you have Cornette in the lineup. So I think you've got two pretty good high upside picks that let's see how they fare in not only in summer league, but early in the season. So again, like I said, the second round is tonight as we're recording on Wednesday, June 24th. The Spurs had the 42nd and 44th overall pick. I will be back just talking about the draft in general, about the draft as a whole. If the Spurs, I'll also talk about the Spurs second round picks at 42nd and 44th. I'll react to that because you're seeing now second round picks are starting to make a huge impact in the NBA lately, with Jalen Brunson, an NBA champion, a Draymond Green. Like there's a myriad of second round picks that have really made a huge impact on the Spurs team. So that's our NBA teams. So look for the second round is just not a wash. You can get really high impact players, especially in this really deep draft. There were some players that didn't go in the first round that could really be good players for NBA teams, in the right system for sure. So just talking about some other teams that happened. I did like, Oklahoma City drafting Daimara. I did like the Dallas Mavericks drafting, Morez Johnson. I'm happy, being a Texas alumni, that Jalen Swain went at 15th to the Chicago Bulls. Another Texas Tech player, went to the Charlotte Hornets in the first round, and Christian Anderson. A Baylor player went in the first round, Cameron Carr. So there was definitely a lot of Texas, kids that got drafted in the NBA. Houston had two first-round picks with Kingston Fleming, a San Antonio product, Brendan High School, going at number 9 to the Atlanta Hawks, as well as Chris Sadak going to the Boston Celtics at 27. He was also part of the Houston Cougars team. So definitely a lot of Texas flavor in this first round. But again, this wraps up this episode. I broke down the top two first-round picks for the San Antonio Spurs, Jaden Quaidens and Taurus Reed. I will be back soon breaking down the draft as a whole for the Spurs and who the Spurs draft at 42nd and 44th. Be sure to like, subscribe to the Patel Pick and Roll Sports channel. Click the bell to get notifications. A lot more Spurs content is coming up, with free agency coming up, summer league. So a lot more Spurs discussion, a lot more Spurs banter as we continue to break down this team that had a really good season making the finals. But let's see how the Spurs attack this offseason to get better, to get back to that level next season. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe to the Patel Pick and Roll Sports channel. This is Shivam Patel signing off.